So before we head into questions, I just wanted to say a couple of brief things that kind of came out of the interviews. First, some of you are dealing with grief. People in your life are sick, or you're sick, or just, the fire of change is often about grief, and we forget about grief stages and how grief works. And, 780,000 people in America died in like the last year. That's a lot of grief. Even if you don't know any of those people personally, and most of us do, that is a lot of death. Like one of our participants is a COVID nurse, and they said they've seen more death in all their 13 years of nursing in this 1 year than in all 13. So this is a wave, a tsunami wave of death. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge the grief that goes along with that. Not to mention, each time we have one of these big climate change events, forest fires, floods, that involves a lot of death and loss. So I think more and more, and this is just my feeling, that the world is going to have more and more like hospice type qualities, where we're really going to be in kind of the grief stages throughout. Not to mention we're all aging, and there's just that continual loss of aging. But so let's, Paul, let's put up the grief stages just so we can look at them for a second. So look on the left here, just so you know, grief stages: shock, numbness, denial, emotional outbursts, anger, fear, searchings, disorganization, we forget about that one, panic, guilt, loneliness, isolation, depression, re-entry troubles, new relationships. And these are the positives: new strengths, new patterns, hope, affirmation, helping others, and loss adjustment. But then, look over on the right. Supposedly they joke about the grief stages like follow a pattern, from the loss on up out. But this is what's happening on the right. We find a new pattern and hope, and then boom, we're back over to anger and fear. So this has been happening throughout the 1.5 years of COVID. It will continue to happen after COVID for years to come. John pointed out the other day when we were talking personally that, the effects of the Great Depression, our parents or our parents' parents were still like hoarding food, and they were still going through the stages of grief like 50 years later. So just know what they are, and don't blend with them. Just be familiar that we're going to bounce around like these squiggly lines. And again, knowledge is power. The ability to name it moves it from the amygdala and to the prefrontal cortex. So it changes where it locates in your brain when you name it, when you make space for it. So you can take that down. Thanks, Paul. The second thing I wanted to mention is the analogy came up in a couple of interviews of really looking at the waves of emotions and thoughts. And some of us have trauma histories, and we're trying to navigate these roiling waves, right, on the surface. And often, I talked about the analogy of a surfer and the big waves. Or maybe we're in a kayak, or we're on a surfboard, but we're trying to navigate all this big water. And sometimes you just need to get on your diving suit and let yourself just go down to the unconditioned. And it's not an either or, it's an and. They're both here. The roiling waves of our conditioning, our thoughts, our emotions, whatever. And then the unconditioned is down at the deep water, and that's here too. And the cool thing is, like, if you try to hide out in the unconditioned and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to the depth and just stay down here, right? A, you run out of air if you're a diver. And B, things pop us back up. We're down in this groovy place of stillness, right? And then we get a bunch of deaths or some kind of life event, boom, gets you back up in the big waves. So you're constantly navigating both. Don't think that one's better than the other. It's an and. It's an and. And another analogy with these waves and going down below. So the concept of I, and really you are just a concept. And all the suffering, the grasping, the I want this, I want that, the concept of I is living a life on that wave surface. I like this, I don't. The suffering all occurs on that wave surface of the concept of I. And you drop below the concepts, below the words, below the lines that you create, me versus you. And again, that's dropping way below the wave, down into this primordial nature of you, way down there. And we get both. Again, it's an and. We get both. So notice when you're up in the waves, whether it's your history, your conditioning, your thoughts, your emotions, your concept of I itself, and then see when you can drop below. Well, what's noticing the concept of I is not the concept of I. It's something else is noticing the concept of I. It's something else that knows thoughts and emotions, the awareness itself. And Paul, you can go ahead and put up that slide with the waves. It's an actual photo. So those are the big waves up there. And then down below, fish is just swimming. So it's that up that we have both. We have all the roiling stuff that comes with a concept of I. And then down below, you just have this quiet. It's actually very quiet. I mean, that's not very deep in that picture, but when you get really deep, it's just complete stillness. And you don't have to know how to do this. Realize, so as you're looking at this picture, the water on top that's moving, that's roiling, and the water way down in the bottom, it's the same water. It's not different. Okay? The waves and the calm part are the same water. And maybe that's all you need to know. There doesn't have to be you to connect them. There doesn't have to be a you to decide where to hang out. It's all the same water in different forms. And so when we wake up, we just know that we're all of it. Water returns to water as water. It was always water. And we're not creating some kind of line or division there. When we use words and talk about it, we do that, but ultimately it's all water. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say. So just see if Any of you have any questions or comments? Yes, thank you, Susan. That is a really great point. Curiosity. Our mind can't hold more than one object at a time. So if you're in curiosity, you can't be in fear. So it's perfect. Beautiful. May that come to fruition. Anyone else want to share deathbed goals or feelings or have questions? Thank you, Lisa. That's so beautiful. And you know, awareness is enough. It's perfect. Some scholar was asked to define the whole Pali Canon into one word, and he said awareness. So you've got it. You've got the word. And boy, you can practice that in every moment. So you go, girl. And be grouchy awareness, then that's fine. Then you're loving awareness. Yeah, awareness never changes. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. That's beautiful. Yeah. And I love that you're in the meditation hall, it seems like. Yeah, and you can see it's getting dark there. It's just so great. I feel like I'm there. Thank you. And take that, that stillness that you found today. Now you have a muscle memory of it and make it wide or do that infinity thing with it, because then that really lights up your neural networks in your brain. And that expansion meditation is for athletes, and they started using that with athletes who had had some trauma, and they were trying to get them to really move into their potential that they were missing. So it's a whole a meditation that's really designed to get you move into your ultimate potential. So you can, if you expand that stillness and that connectedness, just make it as wide as infinity and play around with that. If it doesn't feel too stilted, and then you'll really be turbocharging your muscle memory by doing that. So yeah, thank you for all your wisdom and for all that you've done for this retreat. Been really beautiful having you holding the space. Thank you. I love that you shared that. May we all have radiance now when we're alive and when we're dead. And you especially. Hmm. Barbara? Whee! Thank you, Chuck. I love that. That's so great. Oh, and that is why we do the precepts, so we can be more free. And my teacher, who's actually he was in the military as well, in the Navy for a long time, and he basically died, and it was a spiritual awakening, his death, and then he shared that he said that everything does flash before you. He said, but he said it's like the metal detector, you know, in the airport where you gotta put your hands up. And he said, it always is all clear for everybody because it's you passing you as the divine passing you. And he said, there's that moment when you hold up your hands and go, uh-oh. And he said, it's always fine, you know, but we do get the review, right? In a blink of an eye. And that's why we have that integrity now. But it's always all clear for everybody. Because if it's all one thing, why wouldn't you be passed through? It's all one thing. And like Warren was saying, you know, the beauty is the more I practice, the more I work with no part left out, right? So as we look around the world, if this is all you, you don't get to be a separate person that then can judge this or that. If it's all you, as you, in you, think about like it's all there, like in your refrigerator. When you go to your refrigerator, you open the door, everything's in there, right? And you shut the door, it seems gone. Open the door. It's all you. You're all there. The light of awareness. You're the light of awareness that lights up your refrigerator. Then you shut the door. It's dark. It seems like there's nothing there. It's all you. You're just the light that lights it all up.